Hey everyone, it's Sarah with RegisteredNurseRN.com, and in this video I'm going to be going over how to study for the HESI exit exam. Whenever I was in nursing school, in order to graduate, I had to pass this exam. So I know if you're having to take this exam and it's required for graduation, there is a lot of stress on you to pass this. So in this video, what I want to do is I want to give you some pointers on how to study for this exam and how to prepare for it. I took this exam and I passed first try. So I just want to give you some insight and show you what I done so you can maybe put together a plan for yourself so you can pass. So what I want to do is I just want to go over the basics about the exam and then go into a detailed plan of what I done to prepare for this exam. So first let's talk a little bit about what it is. What is it? Maybe you have never heard of the HESI exit exam. This is a tool used by most nursing programs to assess your ability and your readiness to take the NCLEX exam. The NCLEX exam is a licensing exam that registered nurses and licensed practical nurses must pass in order to work as a nurse. Typically, it is a graduation requirement. Some nursing schools, in order to go to graduation, to say you graduated from the nursing program, you have to pass this exam. Some don't require that, however, but most do. And a lot of programs want you to score at least an 850 or a 900. It depends. Like the program I went to, they wanted all of us to score an 850 or higher. And typically you have about 2 to 3 chances to take this exam, and there's usually about a 2 to 3 week window after each exam that you can study for, and the exam has different versions, so you won't be getting the same test if you have to take it again the second or third time. There's different versions of it. Okay, so what's my experience with it? Like I said, it was a graduation requirement. I had to score at least an 850. I was super stressed out about this exam because I was like, man, I have done all this effort up till now to nursing school, and now there's this one exam that decides if I graduate from the program. So I was really stressed, so I prepared very hard for it. And I ended up scoring the first time 1,002, and this gave me a 96% chance or higher of passing the NCLEX the first try. Well, I took the exam, the HESI exit exam, in March, and I didn't take my NCLEX until June, and I passed NCLEX first try with 75 questions. So it did help predict that I would pass. The scores are used to tell you how you will do on NCLEX if you'll pass. Generally, the idea is if you score at least an 850 or higher or 900 or higher, you have a really high chance of passing that NCLEX first try. That's why a lot of programs want you to score at least that. But if you score less than an 850, your chances of passing first time aren't as great compared to if you would have scored higher. And if you get really low, like in the 600s, you have like almost no chance of passing. So you definitely don't want to score in there. Now on my website, RegisteredNurseRN.com, I actually kept a study log of how I prepared for my exit HESI and the NCLEX exam. And I have listed every day that I practice, what books I use, how many questions I practiced, what I scored on those practice tests, what areas I read. And this could help maybe give you an idea in developing your own study plan. And there's a card that should be popping up or link in the description below, and you can go and just look at that study log and maybe formulate some ideas on how you can prepare. Okay, so let's go over what to do since you're going to be taking this exam. Okay, the very first thing you want to do is you want to prepare in advance. I had to take the HESI exit exam in March. So I started preparing in December, and this gave me 3 months to prepare. And what was great is during December, that's when winter break is. We got about a month off for winter break, so I spent that whole time, even though it was Christmas time, studying for my exit HESI. And I got a lot of studying, a lot of reading done. And then whenever the semester started back, I would still take time almost every day throughout the week to practice questions, to read the HESI book, and things like that. So prepare in advance. You don't want to all of a sudden, hey, the exam's coming up in 2 weeks, I better start preparing. You want to prepare now in advance so you won't get just sidelined. Okay, next, I really recommend that you purchase the HESI study guide sold by the company specifically. It's Elsevier who makes it, the HESI company, and it's called HESI Comprehensive Review for the NCLEX exam. If you are studying to be an LPN, it'd be the NCLEX PN exam. If you're going for your RN, it'd be NCLEX RN exam. And get the latest edition. I think as of right now in 2016, I think the latest edition out on the market is the 4th edition, but they released that in 2013, so be looking for new editions. Typically, if you go to Amazon.com and just type in HESI exit exam, it'll bring it up, and just make sure you're getting the latest edition, because they update these books because NCLEX changes their study plan on what they're going to focus on testing students on, and you want to make sure you're studying the right material. So always go with the latest editions. And shop around when you buy this book. Sometimes you can buy it off the company's website, which typically tends to be a little bit more expensive. Anytime I buy books, I always shop around, and I typically find them best on Amazon.com. So just make sure you're getting the most bang for your buck. Okay, and as a side note, what I also use on top of this HESI guide, I had already bought, I talk about this a lot in my other study videos, had already purchased the Saunders Comprehensive NCLEX Review Guide, and what I used this book for was the extra practice questions it came with, because the Saunders book comes with like thousands of NCLEX questions, and I would practice those questions after I would read in my HESI book, and I would also compare the material in my HESI book to the material in my Saunders book, and I would see what was being repeated over and over, and I was like, hey, that must be really important. If you have to put them in high Fowlers here, then you must need to put them in high Fowlers there, and it would repeat that back and forth, and I would note and formulate in my mind, hey, that's an important concept. So that just helps with comparison. And here in a second, I'm going to actually show you a HESI study guide, the review book. It's an older edition, and the Saunders review book that I use, and just show you what it looks like, the HESI hints, everything that's set up for it to give you an idea of how it helps. Okay, next, whenever you buy the HESI book, what you want to do is you want to read this book from cover to cover. It's not a thick book. It's about that thick, as you'll see here in a second. And I did this, I read it, I started reading it in December, finished it sometime around March. I read every content area, and it really helped. And whenever you're reading this book, you want to make sure that you are paying close attention to those HESI hints in the book and any tables or boxes, because a lot of times this is repeated stuff on the exam, and I can actually remember some of the HESI hints being on that exam just in a question format. So make sure you pay attention to that. Then what you want to do, how you want to do it strategically whenever you read this book, you want to read the chapter. So say you're going to be studying respiratory disorders. Read that chapter on respiratory disorders. Pay attention to those HESI hints in the boxes. Then go and practice at least 100 or more questions specifically on respiratory disorders. You can do that in your Saunders book. HESI, the guide that you'll buy, comes with like 700 questions that you can access from their website. Practice those. And after you practice the questions, go back and read the rationales, what you got right, what you didn't get right. For instance, say that in the respiratory part, you were just horribly scoring on respiratory acidosis and respiratory alkalosis, and you weren't doing good at solving arterial blood gas problems. So what you want to do is you want to go back in that HESI book, you want to reread that material, look at the HESI hints, you maybe want to refer some to other literature like the Saunders book and really read that and digest that material, and go and retake the quizzes or access some more quizzes. There's a lot of free quizzes online, and really brush up your knowledge in that. Now, let me show you what I'm talking about with the HESI book and with the Saunders book and how the book's laid out, so you can see maybe if this is something you want to buy to help you prepare. Okay, real fast, I just wanted to show you what a typical HESI exit exam guide looks like. This is actually the 2nd edition, which is a lot of an older edition. So you'll, of course, want to go with the earlier edition. But I just want to show you how the book is laid out. And just turning to this chapter right here, what I would like to do is whenever I was studying, I would read the chapter that I needed to read. And I would go over all these things right here about what ARDS is. Then I would pay really close attention to these HESI hints. And notice that these HESI hints are everywhere throughout the book. This stuff right here is so important. It's telling you, hey, this is important stuff that's probably going to be on an exam. And it goes into common causes of respiratory failure. You want to look over that. And the nursing assessment, which is always important, and commit that to memory with hypoxemia, things like that. And then when you go to the end of the chapter, it will actually show you more HESI hints, but it also have end of the chapter questions that you'll want to look over. I would typically actually read these questions before I read the chapter, and then I would know whenever I was reading the chapter, hey, that was the end of the question. Test question, so this must be important. So I would look over that and make sure, and here's a table too, of course, blood gases. You want to pay attention to that because ABG values like to come through that. So the HESI book is just really great in just breaking down the material, things you need to know, and it's giving you HESI hints. Hey, this is probably going to be on an exam. So you want to look at that. Now the next thing I just wanted to show you real fast was the Saunders book that I was talking about. And the Saunders book, what I would do, see, we were just reading about ARDS. I would go into the Saunders book and I would find acute respiratory distress syndrome, which is ARDS, and I would also read all the material about that. And what's great about the Saunders book is it has these little triangles right there, and it just tells you, hey, this is important. And I would compare that with the HESI book and just see which material was important and what I would need to know. So that's what I would do, and I'd also practice questions out of this book. So both of them are just really good resources to have whenever you're practicing for your exit HESI. Okay, and the last point I want to hit on is what I've been saying, but to make it a priority to practice NCLEX questions in the content that you are weak. This is just so important when preparing for this exam. I remember professors telling us, you know, your exit HESI is coming up, you guys need to be practicing those NCLEX questions over and over, and that is another important piece of the puzzle. So you want to read that HESI book, but you also want to practice NCLEX questions over and over, especially in those areas that you're weak in. For instance, some areas that I was weak in was mental health nursing, especially those drugs and mental health. In pediatrics, those childhood disorders dealing with the heart and the GI and special things you would do for that, and then advanced concepts like the respiratory and neuro systems. So what I would do is I would focus study on those areas. I would be reading that in my book, and I would just practice those questions over and over, because practicing those questions really, really helps. And try to expose yourself to a lot of different questions. Don't just pick from one thing, like you're just going to practice these HESI questions that come with the book. You want to pull questions from maybe the Saunders guide, there's a lot of free quizzes online, NCLEX quizzes that people have developed to help test your knowledge, because you want to expose yourself to all this stuff so you're remembering these concepts, seeing how this question's phrasing this, what this is asking for. And my website, registerednurserm.com, has free NCLEX quizzes that you can take. A card should be popping up or a link in the description below, and you can access those quizzes for free just to practice taking. So I really, really recommend that you do that. And if you look at my study log on my website, you will notice that every day I was studying almost every day. I was practicing hundreds of questions, and over time it added up to be thousands of NCLEX questions that I practiced, and I think that really helped me. That was one of the factors of why I passed the HESI exit exam the first time. So that is a little bit about how to prepare for your HESI exit exam. I wish you the absolute best on this exam, and don't stress out, even though I know that's easier said than done. And thank you so much for watching this video, and be sure to check out my other videos on how to study in nursing school, and consider subscribing to this YouTube channel.